Hey guys, this is Al. We're back again on the 1994 Jaguar XJ12. So we ran into a problem with this car. It's a Jag. We have lots of problems with this car. I took it for a drive a while back, and as soon as I drove it back, it started leaking from the radiator. So the radiator failed, and it failed right at the plastic tank. So this is the factory radiator, and it came with plastic tanks. I'm guessing it's the original radiator. Nothing I could do about it, so I ordered a radiator from eBay, one of those 3-row radiators that they sell. Unfortunately, that radiator didn't fit. It was designed for the it was listed as a radiator that's compatible with anything from 1975 till 1996. So all the Jaguar V12 models, but it was only actually suitable for the 5.3 V8. So it would have worked in the XJS up until 1992, and in the XJ12 up until 1992, when they had that old original Series 3 body style. I compared it next to the XJ12C that I have over there, and it would have fit perfectly, but it doesn't work on this car. There was
the engine oil cooler and the temperature switch for the cooling fan.
Yeah, so the cooling fan temperature switch, the engine oil cooler was completely different. They had, for the transmission cooler, they had threaded fittings rather than fittings that you push on and use a hose clamp. So,
and this takes 3 radiator hoses. There's like 2 upper hoses and 1 return.
Right. So it was a completely different radiator, right? You know, the other one I think just came with 2 radiator hoses, right?
Yeah.
So luckily, you know, I was looking through eBay, and there was a dismantler in Pennsylvania that was dismantling an XJ12, and he had this radiator for sale. So I just got this radiator. I actually bought it at the beginning of the month, but it just took a while to ship, and it just arrived today. It's an updated version of the factory radiator. It looks exactly the same, except it's got aluminum tanks, and I know that these were an updated version, you know, from the factory. This isn't an aftermarket radiator. They cost around $800 or $900 brand new. So I was very lucky to find this. I got this thing for I don't know, about $250, $260 including taxes. So I was pretty happy with it. We're going to install it today, and we're going to see how it works out. But just wanted to give you a quick update, and we'll put the radiator on, and then update the video afterwards. Hopefully everything will go well. I'd really hate to pull this radiator back out again. Hey guys, this is Al again. So I wanted to give you a quick update. We eventually got the radiator in this car. It was a real chore. What we found is that the front was slightly tweaked around the core support at the bottom of the radiator. Maybe because somebody drove up onto a sidewalk, you know, in a parking spot, and just kind of crept up onto the sidewalk. But in any case, the core support basically wraps around the radiator sits in it, and it was pushed up. And as a result, if you come over here, I'll show you. Because this radiator is an aluminum radiator, the bottom hose connector is a little bit thicker and it sits a little bit lower. For that reason, everything was out of place. It was touching the frame rail. We couldn't get the radiator on. We couldn't get the hose on, and we couldn't get the temp sender on because everything was tweaked. So we ended up having to pull on that core support to get it going. The way that we did it is we put it on that lift. We raised it up in the air, and then we strapped a 10-ton puller on the core support and pulled down while we had it strapped to the back of a pickup truck. That was able to, it took a lot of force, but it was able to move everything back to where it should be. It's still not 100% perfect, but it's close enough, right, to where everything now fits. So the radiator's back in, everything is connected up, the temp sensor is working. We had to solder some lines because somebody had gone in there and messed with the connectors, so we had to go solder new lines and wires in for the temp sender. But it's all back together again. And you know, everything's working. So I think the next thing I'm going to do to this car is get it painted because it looks hideous, but it's actually a pretty nice car. I'm going to remove this molding. I don't know whether you saw, but there was two moldings here, and I had a choice. I could either put another third molding in, and we'd have 3 moldings, or I could remove one. And I thought the best thing I could do is remove it. So what else is going on? A little bit of so that was a really good deal. That kind of worked out really well. Unfortunately, I did run into a snag. I was planning to drive this car home one day. This is my 98 SL500. And unfortunately, as I was leaving, it was around midnight. I found that the taillights weren't working, and it was the bulb control module that was bad. Vaughn figured it out. He's the one who was holding the camera. But you know, I was about to go home, and I didn't want to drive with a blown tail light, so I left it here and I drove the Corniche home. And unfortunately, when I was driving it back the following day, it overheated, and I was heading up 75, and all of a sudden, you know, I heard a buzzer go off, and it was the coolant warning light. I was just by a gas station, so I pulled in, and I had to add about, I don't know, a gallon of water in. Actually, probably more than that, probably a gallon and a half. Added that, hoped that it would get me home or get me back to the shop, which is about 20 miles away. And I maybe have got about 3 miles, and it popped again. And this is what happened. Let me show you this hose. So I guess there was so much compression that it blew the hose apart in basically 3 pieces. So I'm pretty sure the head gasket's gone on this car. We're about to test it right now. So you know, I don't want to say for sure that the head gasket's gone, but I'm 90% sure because you don't get that kind of compression. I was able to pull a hose out of one of the parts cars that I bought just to use it for testing. But right now we're going to test it with this block tester over here that I picked up from Harbor Freight, and we're going to see if it changes color. If it changes color, it validates that the head gasket has blown, and then we're going to have to basically pull the heads off and get them fixed. So that's unfortunate because, you know, this car ran really great. You know, it wasn't cosmetically, it wasn't the greatest looking car, but it was one of my nicest running cars. So I'm really, I'm really disappointed that happened, but you know, it is what it is. So let's real quickly go and test it. We're going to test it with a block tester. I don't know whether you're familiar with how this stuff works, but this is a combustion tester. There's a special liquid that's inside this tool, and what it'll do is it'll detect combustion gases from the engine if they enter the cooling system, and if it does that, then the gases will change the color of that liquid. So we're going to real quickly test it.
And we also believe we have an external head gasket leak on that bank. There's something dripping under the exhaust manifold. Kind of hard to see, but
right. So Vaughn thinks this. I'm kind of skeptical right now, for the simple reason that hose, it was this hose that blew. So when this hose blew, it kind of blew water all the way back here. And when we were initially looking at the head gasket, or inspecting the car afterwards, we saw some coolant over here by the exhaust manifolds. Now, he could be very right. It could be an external head gasket leak and not an internal one, because we couldn't really see oil and water, water and oil, but we saw some of this stuff. But I'm hoping that, well, I mean, it doesn't matter anyway because the head gasket's going to come off, and if the head's going to come off, the head gasket's going to be replaced. But I'm hoping that it's not an external leak, because I'm worried that an external leak may mean a cracked cylinder head or something like that. So that's my bigger concern. But we will find out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to test it, and then we'll determine next steps. The main difference between how this car ran before and how this car runs now is it still runs and it still drives, but it's very difficult to start, and it just runs terribly. Like it doesn't sound like it's got a miss. It just sounds really low in power, and it's got, you know, I mean, this engine was really healthy. It ran great. It went down the road perfectly. You know, it was just a really nice, smooth running engine. So that's unfortunate.
So if we have a big enough leak, the combustion gases will push bubbles up through here just at idle, but we're not sure what kind of leak we have. We know it built up a lot of pressure, enough to rupture the hose, which could have been old. It could have been lots of pressure from it overheating. We don't know. But this is one way a head gasket can leak. We think we might smell some antifreeze in the exhaust. But this is the first and easiest thing to check. So we'll start it, let it idle, and see if it builds up enough pressure to bubble through the test fluid, and any hydrocarbons in it will change color, I believe, yellow or green.
Right.
We've replaced the hose, so the rest of the cooling system should hold pressure. So I guess we'll fire it up and see what happens.
So one thing I did notice is that the car, last time we cranked it and started it, it did get warm pretty quickly. The unfortunate thing about this whole deal is that my temperature gauge did not increase significantly. So to me, this car had no indication that it was overheating up until I had the coolant warning buzzer go off, and that's what made me pull over.
And that's likely because this is probably the coolant temperature sensor right here. I'm not sure, it might be a fan switch. But if you run out of coolant, that's no longer submerged in hot coolant, so the block could be extremely hot, and that sensor wouldn't know. It's not a...
Coolant temperature sensor needs coolant, and if you're losing coolant, then it's never going to know.
And in a lot
that it's running hot.
More modern cars, they usually have a cylinder head coolant temperature sensor, so even if it's out of coolant, the head will transfer enough heat to it to show a hot running engine.
You know what has that? 6.9 Mercedes has it.
Oh yeah, it's threaded in the
back of the cylinder head.
Driver's side cylinder head on the rear.
All right, so we're going to fire it up.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you see how it really didn't like starting out. Well, looks like it's bubbling up already, right?
Yeah, we'll see. The better indication would be a changing color. It might push some air out. And you can squeeze the bulb and help it, but we're just going to let it see if it can detect on its own. You can see how it's changing color. So that's the clear indicator. Don't really see anything, but we did have the cap on before, so. But I mean, it doesn't really matter what's leaking; it's got to come apart. So that's. So if we put a cap on it right now, these hoses would get rock hard, and if we tried to drive it, it would blow the heater core, or the radiator, or a hose, whatever it could. So.
All right, let's cut the engine. There you go. And you can see it's gone a nice yellow color, so it's definitely got combustion gases in the engine. So the heads are going to have to come off. So, all right, guys. So obviously the heads are going to have to come off, both of them. I don't know whether it pays to do a compression test. I'll leave that to Vaughan to work out. He's going to be doing the work. I'm going to be writing the checks, I guess. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the heads off first, and then we're going to see what we need. Decarb kit at Intro Car, and it has all the, it seems like a pretty comprehensive kit. It has the intake manifold gaskets, the valve stem seals, the head gasket, the thermostat housing, you know, everything there. So that's definitely something that we need to replace. And I think that's going to get us most of the way there. Probably order a new water pump with it as well. Injector seals, maybe, depends on how we take the intake manifold off and whether we need to pull the injectors. But there may be other stuff, you know, obviously upper and lower radiator hoses, other hoses. We just got to figure out what needs to come off. So the goal is to take everything off and then send it to the machine shop. I can order the kit once the machine shop tells me what size valve guides I need to get, because obviously they're going to have to do some machine work on the heads, and they can tell me what size I need to get. Once they tell me what size I need to get, I'll put the order in through Intracar. They've been really fast on shipping, so hopefully they'll get everything to me in 2 or 3 days, and once they get everything back, then we can start putting it together. So it's a real unfortunate situation. Like I said, I mean, I really like this car. It was a fun car. I was planning on replacing the soft top and spending my money there and going with the canvas roof, but then this happened, so the soft top's going to wait, and we're going to get the car running again. So that's it really. That's the update from me, and we'll give you an update once we start pulling things off. Thanks very much.